And I think that what separates the top teams and the lower end teams is that they have a coach that fully understands the ins and outs of their game. I mean, of the game, their game, and how they play, and also the team as well. Because you have four personalities on the team. Now, sometimes it might be a little bit simpler than that. Maybe two people are just like each other and whatnot, but all of them will have their own perspective on the game, and it's up to me as a coach and as a personality to guide them on how to like turn that perspective into one perspective that they can all agree on.
All right, friends, welcome to episode 6 of Phase 10. I'm your host, Phluxy. I'm joined today by Trevor and Syllogic as we dig in deep and talk about a couple of things. One, we want to really get into the week 1 results for Grand Finals for PCS and NA. We also kind of want to take a deep dive into two roles that have literally been a staple and one of the falling points for many teams, which is their IGL and of course their coach. So without further ado, I welcome you guys and let's get right on to it. Our first topic today are going to be those week 1 results. So week 1 was pretty wild. We had some people show up that played, at the top of their game. We had some people show up who played not so much at the top of their game, and the point spread isn't even that crazy to show for it. But let's get into the first guys here, which is Soniqs. The floodgates have opened. Soniqs showed up this last week in the most consistent way they could, and they finished week 1 with 95 points. And that's the kind of performance that fans love to see in competition and might not be so fond of. Is this the sign of back-to-back Soniqs? I wonder, is it the sign? Trevor, I'm going to pass this to you to start up. Let's hear it. Is this back-to-back Soniqs?
Well, come on, Flux. It's week 1. It's not the sign, bro. Like, calm down, Chief. They came out hot, sure, but I mean, yeah. What's to say? They played really well. Soniqs, they showed up. They did what we did in this week. They closed out their games. They got their points. But yeah, there's not really much to say about them besides they played well. But I'm not writing the check yet, so.
Fair enough. Syllogic, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Soniqs for a moment here.
Yeah, I think we came out like very strong as like kind of like a statement just of like what our intent, and I think the boys are hungry to, I guess like you could say PCS2 was more of like a point we had to make of where we did make a roster change, but like this is like a new team. And I think people saw our potential, but I think this week 1 of this new PCS is more we're looking to maintain what we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things, there's like not too much that has changed, but I think we're finding what works and continuing to find what works. And I think that some of these other teams might see us and be like, oh, like they had a really hot week 1, and like I guess in a championship aspect, when you're chasing something like this and trying to do a repeat, there's always going to be like not necessarily a target on your back, but everybody has their eyes on you to try to catch up, or just like we want to replicate that kind of performance every week. But I think yeah, we did really well in this week. We closed out the games we needed to close out, and I think that the boys are continuing to do what they do best. So
hell yeah, they look great out there though. They look great. They look like they hit the ground running. And that brings us into our second team, which is Veritas. They came in second with 63 points overall, and they entirely blew it out of the water day 1, playing at like the top of their game. And then day 2 was quite a bit more calm overall, but I think it was a reasonable week 1, you know what I'm saying? And if we see more of day 1 Veritas, I think they can certainly maintain that position, but it's all going to boil down to that consistency. Can they keep it going? And it's Syllogic. I'll start with you first on this one.
Yeah, considering VTS, like they did a really good day 1, but I think day 2, like when generally after a day 1, you see some of these teams like kind of go back and see like, oh, like this worked out really well. Maybe like I saw this, maybe we should change this up. I think there's a lot of mental game when it comes to that, because you have to consider that every other team is going to be changing things up possibly too. And like if something isn't working, then they might try something else. And I think they tried to play the day 2 a little bit differently. I think they might have not gone their way per se, because VTS is a team that has very high potential and a lot of great players. And I think that like they could keep it up, but in order to chase the championship, I feel like maybe they have a little bit more to figure out than maybe how day one went.
Mhm.
But I think they had a really good week, considering they were about like 10 points ahead of us after day one. I think they could definitely keep it up, and like half of this team has been there before, of where they're like really close to the top, and I guess we want to see them push more.
For sure, for sure. Trevor, what are your thoughts on Veritas and their performance coming into week one?
I think they had two very different days when it came to what the circle did for them.
For sure.
Like, they definitely got some shifts day one, but like that's not to take anything away from them. They performed when they got those shifts. Like they fragged out, they like controlled their area, and they closed out the game. That's why they have so many points. And day two is kind of like I feel like I saw them getting center like early a lot, and that it was just hard shifting away from them, and they had kind of a tough go about that. But I think that's kind of like where you test like the mettle of a team is, when they have those bad days, can they squeeze something out? But they didn't do terrible. I mean, they're still sitting in second place, and I'm excited to see this team performing like this.
For sure, for sure. I'm excited for them as well. I just hope it's not something that we saw like with hard shifts where week one they
like
came out swinging.
Yeah.
You gotta hope. But I have faith. I have faith. Well, let's talk about Oath for a moment then. Our third place team. They finished with 61 points and they found themselves in third overall. Coming out of week one, excuse me. Day one was absolutely crazy in terms of like a demonstration of strength. I was going crazy in that first match when they were able to take out Veritas in what looked like something that they should not have been able to do at all whatsoever. Once they came down the hill and they finally got down there, cleaned out, I can't remember who was up from STK, but yeah, they just made it happen. They made it happen. It was crazy. But the only comparison that I can really say is I think that they played all right, but I don't even think they really hit their full stride yet. I think it's still kind of warming up. But let's talk about it. What are we thinking about them coming from week two? Trevor, take it away.
I'm gonna let Sean go first.
Okay.
Talk about my own team after.
Yeah. Seeing day one, I saw Oath like winning a lot of team fights, and I saw like them constantly in the kill feed. They were very active. They were in spots that they wanted to be in, and even if they weren't in spots that they wanted to be in necessarily, they were able to make plays happen to keep pushing forward into the game. Yeah, there was just they shined with their kill potential and like their moves, and they were just able to take control of some zones of where they would be controlling a completely one side or even half the zone at times. And there was like one crazy fight against us and them, and they uploaded to Twitter, and it was literally just like maybe like 45 seconds of comms where it's just I'm blind, I'm all white, I'm flashed, and then everyone's like throwing util everywhere, like flash left, flash right, like one more flash, one more. It's like I'm like, how many flashes do these guys have? And it's like, seeing the other side where it's like, oh, they were flashed too. Like, wow, what a crazy ending. Because Duel was going in there like what is going on over there? And then
Right.
they came out, won the game. But yeah, that was a crazy fight. And I know Oath is going to be continuing to go strong, and they're definitely a threat. They're definitely out there. So the capability's there, 100%.
Definitely. Trevor, let's hear it.
It was an imperfect weekend. I'd say that. Like we had a few games like where we just played like the first day of the first two Miramar games. I mean, I think we played them literally perfectly, like to the dot. Like literally, we got to the dot. And like I was really proud of the guys in that first game where you talked about against Veritas at the end, because that's a circle we actually threw really hard in PCS1. And like it was a circle we've like talked about in theory craft, how we wanted to play the split up off the hill, how we wanted to control the area. We know how SDK comes into that circle, how we wanted to like force them into the compound. Like there was a lot of thought process that went into that game, and we literally pulled it off so cleanly. Like, and I was really, really happy with the guys. I know they were really content with that win. And I mean, Pat just went nuts at the end against Veritas and across the street. It was, I mean, if he had got that last kill with the 15x SLR up close, like out of the 1 HP, that would have been nuts. But
That'd be insane.
We kind of definitely Sunday tapered off for us though. Like Sunday, like I mean, I think we had a 0-point game on the games on Miramar, and that's like not something we do. Like we're not happy about that. Like we're a kind of team where if we have like one game like that, like it doesn't matter if we're in third, we don't care about that. Like we just like Bale just typed in the chat, like we just sucked. Like we just sucked. Like it's not a good feeling. And but I know like we took a lot from that. I know Rello, like we were playing in an area that the game I'm referring to is again it's southwest of Los Leones on a hill like across the bridge from Los Higos. And we had a little bit of hesitation, a little bit like unknowing the map in that area with Rolo, but like we definitely talked about it. I know he and I dropped into like a game after like just a pub game and ran around the area and scouted out how we would have played it differently. So I'd say we took from it, but we're not content. I obviously want to be number one. Like Soniqs has got a big lead on us, so
for sure.
We're new week, so
I'm confident that moving forward. And that brings us to fourth place team Duel. I'm happy to say that they looked like they definitely carried that progression that they made in group stages into the finals. And they had 57 points on the week overall, and that put them right into fourth place, which is kind of where we predicted that they would have the capability of being. And Godspeed spoke about it a few times, and I couldn't agree more that the proactive Duel was the better Duel. Right, you know, when they took that step forward to kind of control a situation ahead of time, it ended up really paying dividends for them. And there was some times where they hung back a little bit more, but I think moving forward, if they want to maintain that position in fourth or even vie for a stronger position on the leaderboard, it's going to boil it down to them being proactive and so forth moving forward. But how do we feel the week went for Duel? Syllogic, I'll start with you, my friend.
Yeah, I actually did want to bring up Duel in this one because this was a team where, you know, like I think I stated that like they had like a lot of the like decent pieces, and I think they were really able to put together a good performance. Because looking at, you know, when they originally formed this team like pre PCS3, and then looking at them scrims, like, you know, their progression and stuff like that, and I remember even like, you know, talking to Wooly about like a couple of the games and whatnot, and I think that they're really starting to find their stride in the sense of where they're able to work with each other really well. And I think that previous iterations of Duel in recent times, you kind of saw like maybe a couple people in mismatched roles, a couple people that like, you know, like might have found better success if they, you know, changed a couple things up. But I think that they're starting to show a real comfort level with working with each other, because they're all good friends. They've all played with each other before, but they know that, you know, they don't want to be anything like they were before. They want to be better than that. And I think that, you know, them working with For Earth, who's also coaching for Duel, I think they're able to find something that really works for them, because, you know, their points are definitely representative of that as well.
I couldn't agree more. Trevor, what are your thoughts on Duel?
Definitely got to echo what Sean's saying here. They definitely look like they're just working together well. Like we kind of talked about which of these mid-pack teams is going to be the team that like rises up and challenges. And they're definitely the team on at least our radar right now. Like when they loot near us on Erangel as well, so we pay attention to them a lot. And but yeah, they just seem like they're playing confidently and together, and they're playing like the names on that team we would expect them to play. Like that's all I'd say. You know, like there's a couple of these rosters right now where we see names and maybe they don't like live up to what we would think that team would do, but this team is starting to show that they can do that. So excited to keep watching them play here. I mean, luckily they're still below, so we plan on keeping them there. So
I hear you.
But no, they played well. I think Sean hit the nail on the head there. They're just playing well together. They're obviously comfortable together, and they're well seasoned players. So
agreed. Well, let's move on to a team that might be a little bit newer, or at least have some newer additions, which is the Gascans. These boys definitely popped off on day 2. Day 1 was kind of meh, kind of a little bit more difficult for them, but day 2 it looked like they played to their strengths, and I don't think that anyone would deny that this is the playstyle of choice for the team. However, to echo what the casters said, the difficulty with the performance is that playstyle doesn't always work out. Sometimes you can't just play the aggressive side of things and have it pan out. And I think that as the weeks progress, and we kind of saw this in group stages, those teams that played aggressively that might have had the fraggers but just didn't quite have the strategic side of it, as the other teams adjusted, they kind of fell down the leaderboard. And I hope that doesn't happen to Gascans. I hope they're able to keep that moving forward. But it's fun to watch them frag out. But what are our thoughts on Gascans? Trevor, I'll start with you.
Gascans is the definition of feast or famine, like for me. Like I know Gunner's sitting out tonight, but I'm sure if Gunner was here, he would have some choice words for how they played the first day, especially because they just, I don't know, man. It's like they say they want to do this like aggressive play style, and sometimes that works when you're getting zones and like everything's flowing. But when you need to make a move to like get into the zone, or like you need to scout and move it seems like they just want to pull up on someone, and it's like, well, if our game's ruined, we're ruining your game too. It seems like that's the game plan. I feel like that's a lot of what happened to SDK on day one, like especially like they ran into them a few times, and I mean SDK will like win the fight, but they'll just be hurt afterwards, and like all of a sudden their game's ruined because of it. And so, but like when like I said, it's feast or famine. Like when it works out, it works out, and these like they frag out and they get a few zones, and they had a Millie ending where they were able to get a lot of kills and stuff like that, and that it's gonna work. But I don't know how sustainable it is as a strategy. So
for sure,
that's what I would say.
For sure, that makes sense. Syllogic, what are you thinking on the Gascans?
Yeah, the like what Trevor said about the Gascans is real. Like like feast or famine, and I see a lot of that in their play style of where I remember Tig went into Honey Badger's stream today and asked like, "Oh, like hey, like what is going on? Like what are you guys doing? Blah blah blah." And he went on to explain a bit more like on their kind of play style and how they approach games. And I think I do want to echo that point because Honey Badger was saying like, "Oh, like teams in NA are like kind of like poor at handling predictability, so like or unpredictability." So I think that they have a style of where they want to find like how to punish teams without like like punishing teams that don't have expectations necessarily, like where like the top teams will have expectations like, oh, they're probably going to do this, it's not worth to do that, if they're here, like like we kind of go around them or anything like that. And then it's whatever is against your expectations is probably what they're going to do, because a lot of times I'm listening to comms and they find out it's Gascans, they're like, what are they doing? And then whether they're like in a crazy spot just like crashing a shack killing people, or they're like like they have this wild split going on, they're like, hey, like you see their split, that's crazy, or something like that. Like I think the unpredictability factor can take you to a certain point, but how well they play that and how consistently they play unpredictably is going to be determining of their results. So I think if they can keep going forward and find the consistency, that'd be great. Otherwise, like I wonder how, like like how Trevor question is like, how far can their unpredictability take them against other teams? Like when are teams going to find out that what they do is so predictable now? Like like if they're down one, are they going to come back for that teammate, or are they just going to keep rotating? Like you'll never know. But like once they kind of see like through the games, they can kind of see like, oh, like if we knock one of them right now, or if they know we're here, like they're probably just going to stick around and try to kill us or something like that. It's like, when are teams going to figure out like how they work?
Interesting. I actually didn't know that it was very strategic. I didn't know that there was that depth to their play style there. I figured something had to be going on behind the scenes.
It's kind of like, I don't know if there's a lot of, or at least the way we look at it, I don't know if there's a ton of depth. We just kind of like treat them like they have 4 mimes on their team. Like they're just all going to run at you. Like, we're just like, oh, Gas is in the center compound, and we're over here they'll probably push us. So like, we just expect the unexpected when it comes to them. So I guess maybe that's what they're shooting for, though. So more power to them.
Makes sense. Well, best of luck to them with that play style. Let's move on to Dodge. They didn't do too bad for the week, ending with 54 points, and they tied Gascans overall. And one thing that stuck out to me was it felt like they were a little bit less impactful than what I had imagined coming into the finals. And I'm not sure if the pace was slower for them or the situation was just not quite there for them in some of those games. But in 6 overall, they're still only 9 points from second, so it's not like they're in a bad spot, How are we feeling about Dodge's week 1 performance, though? Syllogic, I'll start with you on them.
Yeah, the way I see Dodge is, when I originally saw them putting together like an experienced roster, I had a feeling that they would know exactly what they need to do, and I saw a lot of times where they're very passively actively trying to get control, where like a lot of them, they'll be very quiet early on, either that or there'll be someone involved very on, but then they'll just like completely disappear towards like maybe like the mid to like end game, and you'll start to see them slowly take control of like wherever side they're on. And I think that they're pretty good at playing like the low profile control getting aspect, but I think that sometimes you just wish like you sit there and you're like, oh, like if we're in between Dodge and SDK, and then like we're thinking, oh, like there's no way SDK could do this, Dodge is going to peek them and whatnot. There's kind of times where there's this like kind of lack of aggression, and I see that whenever they're playing and whenever they're taking control, they kind of dismantle teams slowly, taking an off angle and whatnot. But I think that if they can find a way to mix a bit more of their firepower and aggression with their control aspect, I think it'd be pretty good because they're constantly finding ways to get into the late game. I think
Mhm.
looking at their stats and whatnot, looking at their like total time survived, it's pretty up there. The total time survived right now is in the top 5. So they know how to get in there, and I think that like with their average placement is very high. And I think if they can figure out like how to increase the kind of X factor that gives them that little extra point or two like in kills, or start slowly pushing to take more risks, I think I want to see like a bit more risk taking to see if they can balance it out with their placements right now. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I would agree. Trevor, what are we thinking?
I definitely agree with Sean saying this team is definitely like they're slow. They're very slow in how they move around. They play like they're not a big fragging team. Like they're 8th in frags right now in total kills. Like Zenith is ahead of them, Shoot to Kills ahead of them. Yeah, everybody else obviously on the top above them on the leaderboard is as well. So the teams below them in the standings, the next 2 teams are out fragging them by in some cases like Zenith's like 8 more points than them, and that's so they're getting their points from placement. Like and yeah, I just think it's like the classic. I hate saying this because it's like, oh, let's just be more aggressive. Like that's like what every like team says when they want to play better. Like,
Mhm.
oh, we just need to mix in more aggression here. But they actually, I feel like, just need to mix in more aggression here. Sean had a really cool point there, which I agree with. Was like they're a team that I feel is like unreliable, and if you're like, we need this team to third party somebody, and it's them that needs to do the third party. Like I don't know if they're always the ones to do it. It's like who's on that hill, and it's like, oh, Dobbs on that hill. Like that's why so and so got to do that for free, and it's like we're like
Mm.
if there was a Tiggleton on that hill, there'd be 3,000 mini bullets raining down on you. So that's like the difference, though. Like I don't know if they really have like those like turreting players. Like every team has like their turrets. Like we have Snakers and like Pat will just like start shooting until Rella's like, guys, we gotta rotate. Like, what are you doing? Like takes turreting, I'm sure on that team. I know like Ayla's a turret, like, and they're really good at their job, right? They do their job to the T. Like everyone does their job. But yeah, I think that's what they're lacking. Like I don't know if they're like identified like fragger roles. If you look at their kills, I think I saw Danny had 11, Lamp has 10, Adam has 9, and so they're all pretty even on that aspect. And yeah, they need to mix in some aggression if they want to start climbing here because get those kill points. It can't only be like the games where you win where you get kills. Like there are other games where you
Mm.
need to get like kill points are like super important. Like I mean, somebody asked me one time, another coach asked me like, would you rather have like a 5 kill win or a 10 kill fifth or something? Like an even a point distribution. I said I don't care. Like however I get the points.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if we're winning or who if we like the points at the end of the day. So you always like, but you only have those big games if you're aggressive the whole time. So
Mm.
you gotta just. I feel like if they just turn it up a notch, they might pop off.
Yeah, that was always one thing I want to add on that a little bit. It's like I remember phase 1 of MPL when I was coaching SSG at the time, and we had this issue of where our placements and like whenever we were handed the advantage by circle, it worked out very well. But let's say we weren't handed that advantage, and we were like we were stuck somewhere mid game. And I think that like there's a lot of teams of where when they run into times where they're not given an advantage, they have a hard time of trying to find something else, of where instead of what's right in front of you or the play that's right in front of you, like why not think about it a little more like, hey, if so and so info links up, like how can we get ourselves out of this crap spot, or how can we maximize the amount of points that we're going to get with this play right now? It's like is this going to be a 4 and out? Is this going to be like we get 4 kills and then only one of us are alive, and then we can't kind of, it's hard to rely on that one guy to be like, oh, just kind of go center and like go to somewhere where nobody kind of looks at you and whatnot. And there's always this balance people had to find of where would you like Trevor's question, would you rather go out in 5th or 4th with like 10 kill points, or would you rather get like a very safe game, play for the placement, get 5 kills, move on, stuff like that? And I think that Dodge is a team where they're a bit more on the side of let's make sure we get into the late game first. Let's make sure we're up as 4, up as 3, into like the top 8, and then let's start making our moves. Whereas some of these top teams you'll see in every region are making moves every single zone, or
Mhm.
they're making like strategical moves of where like if we do this and we keep out this team or we fight this team to control this side, then move here, then move here. Like you see a lot of these teams like 18, like 15, 16 kill games and like over 10, and you see that sometimes it's not just their placements, and that's a deeper question than like most can answer, because like some people think like, oh, like the placement points are still there, but you have to look at like how it downscales and how much like one kill is always going to be worth 1 point. It's like sometimes they're going to ask themselves like, do I get this kill right now, or do I just wait for the placement, or do I get both? And I think that Dodge is probably going to have to answer that question themselves. Definitely.
That is deep. That is deep. Let me ask you. I'm not sure if I'll articulate this correctly, but bear with me. The difference between one of those top teams that is getting active like that the whole game and a team that's playing kind of for the placement but can close it out, how big of a gap do you think that is between the two?
I think that the gap comes from an understanding and a confidence in, I guess, like a team overall. If a team is able to consistently make moves around the map while sweeping up kills here and there, kill stealing 1-2, or like clearing out a team after a fight and whatnot, they're going to be that active team that a lot of people see. And you'll see the term inactive being thrown around to like, let's say a team that's like very very good at getting themselves late, very low profile. They kind of go around, do their own thing, and then like they're in the late game with like 3 teams alive, and then that's when they start really making the move. I think that it varies depending on where the zones go relative to where they loot, and also how it ends up going. Because sometimes you'll see teams that just like don't even see any teams or don't shoot at any teams until like the last like maybe like 3 zones, and sometimes those games will happen. But I think there's definitely a gap of where teams can understand how other teams will move, and they'll capitalize on that as well, rather than just focusing on themselves.
Makes sense.
Also, to answer that point, from my point of view, is like I think it's definitely like an experience thing as well. Like Sean's team, for example, or my team, like we have 4 players that are all like, I mean, aggressively mindset, but they just played the game, so they recognize when they see an advantage and like where they can take advantage like of that situation. Like even if we're like spoon fed a game, like I can think of the game in Minos that ended in the group stage. It ended south, and the one where Stakers drove across, like naded the shack, and like everyone was like, "Oh shit, Stakers is nuts." We didn't do anything that whole game. Like we sat in a compound, and I mean, I can literally remember Pat making the call, like, "Let's just take our 10 points here, right? Let's just get the 10. Let's secure the 10 points for the win." But even in that situation, I think we still ended up with like a 12 kill win, because even approaching the end game, we recognize there are now situations we need to take advantage of and get these points. Like there's a team, that the zone's pushing out, and like we need to get all 4 of those. Like we could sit here safe and not move. Stakers doesn't have to drive across and nade a guy in a shack. Like, like that's where I think like the difference stems in your question is like good players that like have a lot of confidence within their teammates, especially like everybody on my team thinks their teammate is the best player that they could play with. That's like why we're on a team together. Like everybody on my team thinks everybody could 1v4 every other team. And so when you have a lot of confidence like that, it just allows you to make the ability to go do it. Because you're not going to like have any reprieve from your team or like any like BS afterwards. Like if it goes wrong, like Stakers dies all the time, like doing dumb stuff. But when he pops off, he pops off. So like I would just say it's good players taking advantage of situations that they recognize. That's the difference between top teams and mid-pack teams.
Interesting. Well, thank you guys for elaborating on that. I appreciate it. Let's talk about STK for a moment. Is it a PCS2 repeat? I'm not sure. They ended that week, or this week with 48 points, claiming 7th overall. The point spread between, again, 8th and 2nd is only 17 points. So it's not like they're
shambles.
It's not like they're on the bottom of the leaderboard, you know what I'm saying? But it's like when you compare STK, a team that people think is the number
Sean,
one.
it's not group stage anymore. So.
Right?
Maybe.
I know. Poor Gunner's not here. My thing is this with them is that everybody kind of expects STK to be, the top team. It's like it seems like they're regarded as the top NA team regardless of what the case is.
That's what every caster says. So.
Oh my god! But with that said, I think we can all agree that STK will obviously improve. Week 2 will most likely be a better performance. Is there any thoughts that we have on STK that we can speak of other than just saying, they'll be fine next week. It's Trevor. I'll start with you.
It's too early to call, obviously. Like they got a slow start. Like I was saying on Saturday, some arguably troll things happened to them with other teams and the way that they got like engaged on when they like circles moving and they need to move in, other teams need to move in, they're getting caught out in dumb situations. And they never really got their footing, but like they didn't play bad necessarily. They still put up a lot of kill points and they're still like playing well. They're one game off, right? They get a 10 kill win. They're in the situation, like they're right up there with us. So, and if they win a game, it's gonna be with like 10 kills. They're like Sean's team or my team, where you don't really see 4 kill wins coming at STK. You see big point games coming out. So it's too early to say that, I'm obviously joking with them, but they could be in shambles by this time next week. So, we'll find out.
For sure. Syllogic, anything you want to add in there for STK?
Yeah, I think, like adding on, like, I was going on a segue about Trevor's point. I think STK's story about week one was, like a lot of times we saw in PCS1, Charity, and a couple other tournaments of where they were able to do whatever they wanted to do. And I think that phase three, a lot of these teams have a chip on their shoulder of where it's the last major tournament of the year, it's the last PCS of the year. They want to go out with a bang. So, they're trying to take names, they're trying to take positions, blah, blah, blah. I think that STK ran into a lot of problems of where they wanted what another team wanted just as much as the other. And it would end in detriment of fashion of where, like, it came down to a question of how bad do you want it? How bad does Gascans want it? How bad does Duel want it? How bad does, any other team that it could go up against STK? How bad does each team want it? And how much will each team sacrifice and put forward? And I think that STK was a team where they will do what they want to do, but if it sounds like it's not really like the best idea, or if it sounds like it's like too high of a risk, they probably won't. But I think that them taking the risk to go as far as they could, and also like combined with other teams just like not letting them do what they want was a big point for this week. And I think that if you look at what, like, their average placements of where, like, their average placements, like, let's say like about 8.38, so that's like about 8th place, and that's like kind of like mid-pack kind of numbers. That's not numbers you really see SDK doing. And I think that you kind of see these teams giving SDK a bit more of a hard time now. And I think that they were used to this play style of where they can take advantage of every single team. And it eventually slowly started coming off to where some of these teams, like my team and Trevor's team, like Zenith and a couple other, like, VTS, they started to become much more ironly handed. Like they sat there with like an iron fist of whatever they want. They want it and they're not going to let it go. And I think no matter how much SDK wants it, that they put themselves in a spot of where, like, they kind of told SDK, oh, if you want this now, like, you're gonna, like, like you're gonna have to fight for it.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. I think they'll be all right. You know what I'm saying? I think they'll do just fine coming into this next week, and they'll make up that ground. But yeah, that brings us on to Zenith, though, which is 8th overall with 46 points, and for a team that I would argue, and likely, I think they really will probably finish in a top 4 position. This weekend was definitely a challenge for them in some regards. What I did like to see was those higher kill games kind of sprinkled in there. If they weren't making it to the chicken dinner, at least they kind of went down just swinging. You know what I'm saying? Zenith can maintain this position for sure. I guarantee you they can stay left leaderboard. Even if it's at the bottom of it, they can stay left leaderboard. But I think they're gonna need to definitely have some big games kind of in between those other frag games, right? At least to fight for a top 4 position. Will we see a better performance come week 2? Trevor, let's start with you, my friend.
Well, first off, I was going to say my boy Shin was fragging, so I was happy about that. He had kind of a tough group stage, and he showed up on this last weekend. I think he dropped 10 kills. But I don't know, Zenith, I feel like I don't know. I feel like that first day they kind of got given a lot of circles, at least on the air angle games. It felt like, and they had the prison circle, and I don't know what was up with them, to be honest. Like, they definitely got a lot of kills, but I feel like they just weren't able to close out games. I don't know if that's still like new roster working out things or what was going on, but I expected them, especially with the chance of like some big games that they definitely had like the opportunity to have, to do better. Oh, someone got pulled over. But But yeah.
Sorry. It's just noise in the background. There's just screams. What dogs? I don't know what it was, but it was something.
Yeah.
But I mean, they definitely show that they can put some points on the board when it comes to killing people. So they're like the polar opposite spectrum of Dodge for me, right? We just talked about how Dodge is playing safe and they're trying to get to the end game.
Mhm.
It seemed like Zenith was just trying to get the kill points and have those big games, but they weren't able to close them out. So we'll see what happens.
For sure. Syllogic, what were you seeing from Zenith?
I saw a lot of regression from Zenith, and I think that like stemming off the point of where Trevor said that maybe they're still figuring things out. I think that they have the firepower of a really good team, but they need to figure out how they can control their firepower, because outright firepower is a fantastic thing, and I think that a lot of people can look at like a straight like very high stats player and be like, wow, that player is really good, and I want that guy on my team, but I think if you look at a bigger picture, you have to look at like how like their interworkings go. It's like how much are they willing to work together, and how much are they going to go like are they going to go to lengths to save their teammate that's down like 100 meters away, and it seems like he's telling him no, I'm safe, or it's like like I'm completely fine, or like I'm dead. Like how much are they going to be pushing and pulling to get themselves deep with a lot of kills. And I think that the firepower is 100% there, because I feel like even the previous renditions of Zenith, we saw a consistency level that was maintained pretty well throughout like PCS 1 and 2. But I think that they always were able to find their strides when they were a little bit quieter, and I think that they're changing things up to be a bit more aggressive, not necessarily so much early on, but towards the mid game. And I think that it's paying off to a certain extent, but they're finding constant hurdles of where to get past that mid game stage, like into the late game all the time. And I think that, like, remember how he said like Dodge needs to figure that out. And sometimes some of these teams will take a step back to take a different step forward, but they kind of still are in the same spot. So, you know, this is something you have to figure out like within your own team. And I think that a lot of times when you look at what other teams do, you can try to replicate those things, but not everything is like, like not the grass isn't always greener on the other side that you might step on. And I think that if they can come together much more often as a team and figure out what works between them as a four-man team, I think that they can push themselves further, but I don't know how far. The potential is there, though.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they have a tremendous amount of potential, and I think that my assumption is it's just some growing pains. But I think come week 2, we'll see them kind of start to shoot their way up the leaderboard quite a bit more. But yeah, was there any other teams that we wanted to touch on before we move on to our second topic here?
I would say I'm disappointed that we took a vote on who's going to be most improved, going into this, and the 2 teams that were named, I think, well, I named Comets and Rumblers, and neither of them made the conversation this week, so hopefully one of them figures it out this week, or some of those other teams that were, the bottom 8 was predictable as it is right now based off group stage, so hopefully one of those teams steps up and we have a new conversation next week.
I agree.
Yeah, I definitely want to see a bit more from some of these teams. I know that, like some of these teams that are down there, if you were to tell me that these teams would be bottom 8 in the grand finals of PCS 1 or 2, I would have said, no, there's no way. There's no way. Like you have to look at these things and say like, wow, like, they're not all too far behind, but they can't really put it together right now. And I think that, like we want a new conversation next week in terms of like, like shuffling in the order. Because I think that a lot of these teams are only like 10, 20 points apart. And I think, that's goes back to Trevor's statement of where one game can change it all. And I think that if you look at NA, you see a lot of games of where it's not consistently there's not this like top eight, like top 8, bottom 8 difference of where like the top 8's always there, the bottom 8's never there. And I think that the kind of unpredictability in NA that, like that Gascans was talking about kind of feeds this whole like shuffling that can happen. And I think that if we were to see a big shuffle from, let's say, like the bottom, like 3 of the bottom 8 teams, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would agree.
It'd be a really good conversation piece, because then it's like, oh, like they were with this team for 1 week, and then the next team they weren't. Like, like, or like it could be completely the opposite. Week 1 they didn't show up. Week 2 they just took names everywhere. So
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. For sure. I definitely looking at the overall, it's interesting looking at the kills that drop off between the left side of the leaderboard and the right side of the leaderboard, because there's a pretty big difference, between those teams overall. But either way, hopefully week 2 will bring some more adjustments, and we'll have some more to discuss. We'll have some different teams to talk about in that top 8. But with that said, let's kind of move on to our second topic here, which is a deep dive into 2 positions, the coaching and the IGL'ing. Gentlemen, we kind of spoke about it previously. We've touched on it in some episodes to an extent, but I really wanted to kind of get a little bit of a deeper view on the IGL role and what makes a good IGL, and then take it a couple steps further and to talk about your interaction with your IGLs, and then kind of like your coaching styles overall. So, Trevor, I'm going to start with you here. If you could, just as a little bit of a recap, I just kind of want to know what you think makes a good IGL, how you interact with your IGL, and how you interact with your team as like a whole in your coaching style, if you will.
Sure. I think on my team, like if like I'm really, this is what I was a little bummed Gunnar missed this one, because like Purdy's such a cool example of like a really good IGL in my mind.
Yep.
Like Purdy's just like a standout guy in that. Like that's when you look to Purdy, like he's the guy that people are like, if you listen to them play, like you listen to them talk, like he's so calm. He only asks what he needs for. Like he's just like it just seems calm, cool, and collected the whole time. For my team, I feel like it's like a little bit different, like with how we operate, like as far as I'd name like a good IGL. And that's why I feel like it's kind of a cop out answer, but it's like a good IGL can be like adapt to like the team environment, because everybody on my team's like a student of the game or whatever. They've all played the game for a long time. They all want to get better. We all watch VODs. Like, we don't always necessarily like watch them together, like every scrim day or whatever, but like we'll put the VODs up, and then I'll see, like I put them up on YouTube, but I'll see, 5 people have watched the VODs, like 5 viewers are on it. And then they're like posting screenshots, and we'd like have a team discussion about how we should have done it. So it really comes down to my team is like who just took the like authority to like talk the most and be like, I think we should do this. Like, obviously like Wolf used to call a lot for us, but even when Wolf was calling, like Rello made a lot of calls. Like Rello, like he's a very active speaker. Like he was a guy that's gonna like some people get really, really focused on the game. Like when they're shooting or they're doing whatever, like their ability to communicate like goes to nothing. Like if like Snickers is super focused like on shooting, and he's like staring at his like 8x, and he's like lasering someone across the map. Like a lot of times, even in scrims, I'll like bug him and be like, "Yo, bro, what are you shooting at? Like, tell your team, like if you're gonna knock a guy, like talk to your team." So Rella's just kind of like he naturally like elevated himself to that role just by talking a lot, but like like I said, he's a big student in the game. Like he and I will, and this is like my coaching style comes into it, is I've known Rella for like a really long time. Like maybe like the average person doesn't know about like our like relationship as far as like players or whatever, but like I almost teamed with Rolo and my original like contenders team, like overconfident back in the day. Like Rift, who was on the team at the time, had to step down, and the only reason, Shrimsy went to Ghost. Shrimsy's on that team, and we had the okay. Like Rolo was going to join the team. He was like scrimming with us, and like PUBG blocked it at the last moment because like his team had used like a roster swap. But Rolo and I have always been like friends since that time period, so we have a really good like relationship with each other where we can like have fun and bounce each other off, and there's a level of like respect there, and that's the only way that I feel like a coach can really like coach a team is if I say something to him, like the last game today, like he called something out on the first rotate, and I'm like before teams even move or anything, I'm like, well, what if you did this? Like I'll just give him an idea, and he'll be like, oh, that's pretty good. And like, let's try it, or like we'll talk about it afterwards. Like, and there's an acknowledgement there, and like he'll bounce ideas off me. The first thing he says, like when the game's over, is like on the weekend is, Trevor, did like we screw up on macro play at all? Like, did we outposition wrong? Like, what do you think? Like, and so I know he seeks me for like I don't know, like he bounces questions off me and the respects what I have to say. But that's what makes like a good IGL though. Like Rollo doesn't think he's always right. Like he probably thinks he's wrong 80% of the time because he's always trying to get better. Like he's always trying to push his team, and he's always trying to like figure out like a different we get a lot of the same circles and scrims the last couple of days, and like we've played them like pretty differently, like a lot of the times, and gotten to the better places. And I really feel like our team has like gotten to this point. Like everyone jokes like we get fed like when we win, but like we've gotten screwed on circles so many times. Like we have like the best ways to get into circles. Like we've had so many El Pozo zones. We loot Minos, the other side of the map, and like I'll tell you what, my team really knows how to get to El Pozo now. Like we are categorically like the second best Pozo team on the map besides the team that loots there, I think, like in those endings. So as far as like my coaching style, we touched on it last week too. Like I just think it's a lot about like you have to fit in with the guys. Like I fit in with them. Like we will joke, we'll laugh, we'll have a good time. Like and there's like a brotherhood there or whatever. And but also they know like I'm like really like looking out for their best interests. Like they know that like if I tell someone to straighten out or stop tilting or like because I'm like the fifth view, like I'm the fifth party, looking down. Like we have a couple players on our teams that really wear their emotions on their sleeves, and like I'll just tell them like, and a big problem like we've had in the past and still have every once in a while that we work on is if we have a bad game, like bouncing back in that next game like 10 minutes later and not talking about that last game and like thinking about, oh, this guy ratted me, blah blah blah, this crap happened. Like bouncing back is like one of our biggest hurdles that we're currently working on, and like and just handling emotions and keeping those in check. That's why like we have always memed like we have like 3 kids and like an old man, even most on the team, and now we have Pat. But like it kind of works that way because like Pat's the guy that like will straighten them out. Like I've told Pat like that's a little bit of his role. Like he'll be like, "Yo, shut up and like just play the game." And so yeah, I just think
oh no, did we lose him?
Oh,
I think.
hear me?
Oh, there we go. There we go. He's back. He's back.
There we go.
Shit, everything froze, bro. I got it. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of respect. And what makes a good IGL? It's just somebody who's vocal, has respect for their team, and constantly wants to improve. Relo puts more time in this game than anyone I know. So that's what it comes down to.
Hell yeah. I love the answer. Syllogic, let's go on to you, man. Let's go on to you. So again, just to recap, what your thoughts on what makes a great IGL? It doesn't have to be in this order, but what your thoughts are on what makes a great IGL, how you interact with your IGL, and your coaching style as a whole.
Yeah, I think I'll actually start with my coaching style as a whole first, because I think that it's easier. It's a little bit it can like segue smoothly into like H1. H1 is our IGL. So I was always the kind of person where like I was able to see a lot of things in PUBG like from like an outside perspective. It's like, is it really as simple as it looks? Like, yeah, like because this team just like sent it to the center and just wanted, like, is that really like something you want to keep doing? And I think that when I started a couple years ago, fun fact, the very first team that I got like a coaching experience with was with Totality for PGI 2018, and that was with Purdy Curdy, Smithy 97, Los HD, and Interrogate. And I learned a lot from that team. And I think that from there till now, I think I kind of took a step back compared to what I thought I would be. And I think that, while everyone has their different styles and every team has a different approach, I think that with my team and with the previous team Genesis, like I had probably the biggest broadening of my horizon in the sense of where I look for, how like Trevor said, like, he looks for his best interest, like his team's best interest and whatnot. And it's like, I think that we both have this ability of where, like as much as your team's best interest may be one thing, we offer like the outside perspective and also offer like, whenever we see scrims and whenever we see like the map, we see this kind of like God's eye, bird's eye view, and like, and we could see anything around the map. And I think that offers a level of understanding that a lot of these like guys don't understand until they go back and look at it themselves and it's be like, oh, like, when we were there, they were there, and I had no idea, or like, no, the reason why this happened was totally not what I thought what it was. And I think that when it comes to coaching my team, like I have this like this level that I like can talk to my players of where like, hey, like this makes sense. What you guys are doing, like, like whatever is happening right now, like you guys are just making it really hard on yourselves. Why not like, look at it this way? Or like, if a bad game happens and they need to reset and be like, hey, like, like, and no matter how long the discussion was or whatever they can talk about, I can tell them, hey, like, this fundamental or this thing, you didn't even do that right. So instead of like, trying to be like, oh, like, what if this, what if this, what if you did that, what was good or bad, like you can start by, getting that done first. And at that point, you might not even ask yourself that question. And it's
Mm.
a lot of times you will have to go back to fundamentals because a lot of things only get to advanced stages if the basics are correct first. And I think that a lot of teams will figure out that if I were to go on and literally list every single basic of the game, it wouldn't be possible. But like honestly, there's a lot of teams out there that can try to look at other teams and replicate them, but won't understand the basics of where like every play is made off of information. In order to get this information, you need to take a risk. In order to though this and this, you need to play enough. In order to know that this team goes here, you need to study. In order to know that which team is fighting, you need to look at the kill feed. There's a lot of aspects that a lot of these players may not realize is important in North America and just for any region. And I think that what separates the top teams and the lower end teams is that they have a coach that fully understands the ins and outs of their game. I mean, of the game, their game, and how they play, and also the team as well. Because you have four personalities on the team. Sometimes it might be a little bit simpler than that. Maybe two people are just like each other and whatnot, but all of them will have their own perspective on the game. And it's up to me as a coach and as a personality to guide them on how to turn that perspective into one perspective that they can all agree on. I think that the biggest thing I was able to do for this team is help them find what they wanted to do and perfect what they wanted to do so that they can do it every single time. And even though there's times where they utilize their star power, their star fragging power to outgun other teams and whatnot, I think that when it came down to tackling their kind of cracks and tackling what might not be tied so well, it went back to the basics. And I always said in order for this team to be good, we need to be doing this right first. And that we can't continue to we can discuss for 2 hours long what we might have did wrong, but if we didn't do the fundamentals right, there's no discussion that can go anywhere. And I think that coaches will be able to understand their players and what they want and be able to reinforce that. And I guess I'll move on to Huynh now. I've been working with Huynh for almost 2 years now, and I think that the experience of a player and the experience of a coach, and when that comes together in the form of someone very well in and out, like the coach and the IGL can always end up agreeing how does H1 like to play? How does H1 want information told to him? How does H1 want to run the team? How does Huynh want to map out each game? All these kind of questions will be asked, and it's between the IGL and the coach to develop a bit like the understanding and the approach to every single game. I feel like because even though a lot of the players on my team, Mime, Shrimsy, and Tig, they can all make calls as well, and they always constantly feed H1 information, and H1 wants that. He doesn't want to be the person that literally is relied to for everything, but he gets the final call.
Yeah.
And so stemming back to Snakers is an aggressive player, Pat Caps, Bale Frost, they're really aggressive players, and they all want to do things and make things happen. I think that the IGL and the coach working together will be something that will take weight off of the other three players' shoulders. Because the way H1 IGLs is he makes the final call. He will map out how he wants to play a game, and he will have he will be the first one with the rotated mind, and also he will remember the stuff from other regions, and he's kind of this information bank, I guess. And the coach will also share that as well, because in order to be a good IGL, I feel like not only do they have to realize what their job is, they have to realize the kind of captainship that they take on while being the IGL. They have to be able to rally the troops. They have to be oh, all of those suggestions are great, but I think we should do this. I think we should do this now. Or we don't have to do that. It's a practice of push and pull, restraint, and aggressiveness. And I think that H1 really took a long time to develop this, because on previous teams, he had a hard time being the primary IGL because some of his teammates wouldn't give him as much light of day and whatnot. But I think that once he took this role of he's the only one, he's the only one making the final call, and he's the only big mind that's kind of questioning these things while his players are kind of helping him reinforce that, was truly great for his own mind, because he always wanted to be that guy. He always wanted to be the captain of the team. He has a really big captainship role within us. And I think that working with him has been an absolute pleasure, in the sense of where a lot of times when I was first brought in, he quickly realized that me and him had the kind of same idea. Wow, that makes sense. This is really complicated. We don't have to do that. We could just do this. And I think what separates good and up and coming IGLs that are in NA is like on top of experience is the understanding that sometimes the most complicated answer isn't the right answer, and like sometimes the answer is right in front of you, sometimes the answer needs digging, but if you study and kind of like have like an inspiration factor of some sort in terms of a coach that's probably experienced or kind of knows a lot about the game, it's very impactful. And I think that um working with H1 and seeing his development has been nuts, because we had this problem in previous PCSs of where we were really good on Miramar, but we had a very hard time on Erangel. And that was always a question in PCS1 of where, oh, like, they just want a Miramar, but can they keep it up in Erangel? And sometimes we would just fall completely short. And I think that PCS2 we were able to turn that around like crazy. And it's not even like that we put in a crazy amount of work to Erangel. We just found what makes sense. And Tiggleton and Mime and Shrimsy both were all able to come together and be like, okay, like that either doesn't make sense or makes sense, and we want to do it. So yeah, like H1's like truly a great guy, and like same thing what Trevor said, like all those guys like would like in order to stay at the top, you have to put in the work to stay at the top, and they're all right up there as well. So like the hungriest will be the ones to get the chicken dinner.
I think it's also it's a different conversation like to have with a team like my team or Sean's team, where we're kind of like you said, we've ironed out the basics at this point. Like we're like on to like the next day. Like I feel like a lot of times my role is like Gon said, like I have the God's eye view. Like I'm just like the fifth player on the team in the conversation afterwards. Because like after every time you die, everyone will be like, oh, we should have done this, or we should have taken advantage of that. And I'm just like the fifth like player, like in the team conversation a lot of times. Like it's like passive. Like I'm not teaching Pat Caps how to play the game, right? I'm not teaching Carlo or Sego how to play the game. Like they played just as long as I have. Like they reached higher heights than I have as a player. But like, so we're like to that point where we're just like augmenting them and like what they can do. Like I can tell you, like if I were to go onto a different team, like my approach would be like if I was in one of those bottom 8 teams, my approach would be like categorically different, and how it would I would actually like be teaching them, I think, some things on how to play the game, like how I felt they should do it if they wanted, if they wanted to hear from me in that aspect. Like we had a lot of that. Like I think like we went through a big teaching phase with our team after we got the shit kicked out of us in Sweden in January. We came home and decided like let's learn how to play the game. And Wolf and I like did a lot of teaching to like the young ones to that period, like how to play the game. And but yeah, like at this point, like with our team's like progression, like Soniqs or SDK, I'll throw them in there too, or my team, like we're not necessarily like coaching in the aspect of like let's teaching them how to play. Like we're just sometimes I joke I'm more of a manager than a coach. Like I'm just kind of like
yeah,
like I'm there to augment them and to make sure like I think the ship is pointed in the right direction, and they trust me in my view of where I think the ship should be headed, and then they listen to that, and we all work together as like a common goal.
Yeah, it's always that outside perspective too, because like as 4 they can have a discussion, but sometimes they might miss a nail, sometimes they might miss a certain point, and we're there to be like, hey, like you guys didn't even talk about this, what about this? And they're all of a sudden like, oh crap, like wow, like that, like that's the reason why none of this worked after all. Like what have we like what we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes doesn't even matter anymore. Like it's always good to have someone to offer that outside perspective and that outside answer that they just like cannot find sometimes. And I think
somebody with the experience in the game that they respect in that aspect.
Oh yeah.
So that's where it comes in. Like I mean, obviously I played, Sean played, like, but we've both been around. Like I've known Sean since 2017. Like just from PUBG, and so it's the same kind of thing. I think for both of our positions within our team, I feel like Gunner is pretty similar too. Like just kind of keeping the mindset in check with the team, keeping the vibes right, like recognizing like I'll call them out. Like I can recognize. Like for whatever reason, like the last Sunday when we had that 0 point game I was talking about, like we were just like it just seemed like everyone was stressed out for no reason. Like we're in third or second. We came off kind of a shitty game, and everyone was like they didn't want to make a mistake. And they were hesitating, and it just seemed like there was a lot of like stress attached to every call. And like we don't ever play good when we're like stressed. Like yo, we should push up. Like Soniqs is fighting gas on the hill or something. We're like yo, we should third party this, and like somebody would be like, but like what if so and so shoots us? And like when we're playing our best, it's like there's no like it's go.
Yeah, it's like click,
And-
click, click,
and-
play after play. Like,
And so like I'm just there to like keep them in check, I guess is what like they're the. I mean, people laugh at me, but like I truly believe like my players are like I think it's the best players in the world. Like I think my four, like at their best when they play the best, like if there's ever a world championship that they get to attend or anything like that in the future, like I think they can win that. Like that's like, but I mean, some people will say I'm stupid. STK is the best team, and they sure, obviously. But like that's my role. Like I'm the biggest. At the same time, I'm the biggest cheerleader for him, right?
Yep.
You know, like
the biggest gas can.
yeah. So. Exactly. I'm pouring the most gas. So,
Mhm.
but yeah. So our roles, I think the roles change like with the level of the team. But like I feel very lucky to be at the point with my team where I feel like we put in so much work together. I feel like Sean's very similar with him and his team. They put in so much work to get to the point they're at, and here we are. So
Yeah. And then like that was another thing I wanted to talk about slightly is where like there comes a point of where when you're coaching or when you're like analyzing for a team that's so good and that has played so much and knows the ins and outs and like just misses a couple things here and there comes a point where like like how he said you're not teaching them how to play anymore. You're teaching them that okay, like what you guys are doing right now really works well and you should continue it. Don't change it up.
Mhm.
Some of these teams will psych themselves out and be like, you know what, like wow, that like that there's like there's no way we can make that work. We've tried it like 3 different times and it hasn't worked like at all ever. And it's like the coach is there like can be there to be like, wow, hey, like you guys are making it really complicated, or you guys are making it like a lot
yeah,
harder than it is. And it's like the answer's right there, but like there's always this like mental game of where like they know they're good and they know they can do it, but sometimes they're not. They're just like emotional or like not asking the right questions, and sometimes the answer's right there, and they're like like they're like running around it. And
Mhm.
I think that like what comes with coaching a team is like the respect that they know and understand you, and also that the coach will understand the players of where whatever they want and whatever this is discussing is not just for no reason or not just because they want to like tell each other like, oh, like you need to do this next time. No, you need to do this next time. Like I could have done this better, I could have done that better. If everybody can come together as a team with the coach, that is what forms some of the best teams in the world right now, I think.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. I love this deep dive. I don't. Do we lose Syllogic there? Or are we?
he's lagging a bit, but yeah, I would have like added that point too. Like it's really easy for a team. This is where like I think a role of the coach actually is like really powerful. Sean made me think of this. It's really easy for a team to associate like one or two bad experiences with something and like never want to do that play again. Like I was saying, like I think we're one of the best. Like I was kind of joking, like we're like the second best Pozo team besides Zenith there. Well,
Yeah.
because we had a lot of Pozo circles, like in group stage 2, and when we first like got approached them, like we had some kind of like shit experiences. Like we dove like a bowl on the south side of the hill. We kind of got stuck in there. We got surrounded and like naded out, and everyone was like, "This is crap. Like we can't do anything."
Mhm.
But, like I was just like, "Yo, guys, like." If we just adjust how we drive in here and how we like adjust the drive scout, like I literally just assigned roles to the first guy in. I was like, the first car in, when you're drive scouting, you need to look at this, this, and this. I gave him 3 things to look at, and if we can get any of the, we want 2 out of the 3, like because we want to split there because we can't like. So it's just like Sean said, it's like that's what I think like the value of a coach, like somebody that respect like comes in is like, it's like the players are so good that they almost always come up with the right answer. Like I'll always be sitting like watching the stream, like seeing a compound's free next to them, and I'm like, oh god, please scout it. And they almost always do, right? They like my players are like the first thing I've written in our team channel is like scout everything always, like don't assume, like right, like don't assume, like because like I mean I'll be like these players are bad, you're better, like just don't assume they took it, like just to like give them like that mentality, and so they're usually going to do it, but like I just don't want them to have like one bad experience. Like, okay, that plays crap. Let's never do it again.
Right. 100%. Yeah, that's what I told my boys too.
Yeah. So offering this out little tweaks, little adjustments. That's like where we're at. So in like certain plays. So
assumption is another very huge thing too, because in PUBG, like the top teams will never assume, and also like another thing that the top teams will never assume is that they will play so that they don't rely on other teams to do something. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that separates, like, let's say like us, Oath, and STK from the rest. And the thing is that some of these teams will be like, oh, like there's a team south of us, but there's another team to the southeast. You know what? Maybe if we just stay quiet and don't shoot at them, they'll just fight. And like a lot of those things, you could rely on those happening. But if you are in control and of the gas pedal, that will always like benefit you more than if you're relying on others to let you to enable you to press the gas. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I see is that like some of these teams just like absolutely are reliant on what other teams do, and they can't do what they want sometimes.
Interesting.
Kind of circled back to the good teams take advantage of the situations they see. So
yep, exactly. Yeah,
we've kind of circled it back now. So
yeah.
Man, what a deep dive though. It's always interesting because these are the sort of conversations I feel like you just can't get anywhere else. It's hard to pick this information out unless we're here talking about it. So thank you guys so much for your input, not only on that but also on the results. And obviously best of luck to both teams coming into week 2. It'll be an interesting week to talk about. I'm really hoping we have some shakers and movers and the whole 9 yards. But I believe that is all we got to cover for the night then. So gentlemen, thank you very much for making it. My friends in chat, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will be back momentarily with some more games, and then we'll be back next week as well with Phase 10. We should have Ryan and Gunnar back in the mix then, so it'll be all 5 of us, and we'll make it happen. But yeah, until then, guys, thank you very much. Appreciate you, and have a good night.
Peace out, guys.
Always a good
Definitely.
time.
Take care, guys. Take care.